Okay, so there was a report on Hollywood Reporter, and they said that more streaming titles headed to theaters after Army of the Dead cinema run, says the Cinemark CFO. So, I'll just read this bit here. The results were really encouraging for the prospects of future releases. Cinemark CFO Sean Gamble told the Credit Suisse 2021 Annual Communications Conference during a vital appearance on Tuesday. Army of the Dead played on cinema screens for 7 days from May 14th to May 21st when it was released on Netflix. Gamble said Cinemark's wide release test for the Netflix film, brought on by fast shifting theatrical windowing for Hollywood titles during the pandemic. Warner Brothers made a pandemic era decision to go day and date with HBO Max and had signaled the studio with return to a traditional window in the 45-day range in 2022, which I hate. Paramount, in effect, has a 45-day window, and Universal has gone to dynamic theatrical window, which I think is the best one for its titles, which with a 17-day theatrical release for small to mid-sized movies, and at least a 31-day 5-weekend cinema run for tentpoles. I think this one is the best option. Zaradi said Disney was in a test and learn phase to continue with the upcoming release of Black Widow. Ah, clearly, the Windows situation is reduced from what used to be 74 days, which is terrible. Probably more in line with the dynamic window of the low 30s to mid 40s, he added. So, I think the theatrical window being reduced to like a month or so is a pretty good thing, and I understand why they do it. They need to make the box office money and all that. But in an era where when streaming is there are streaming wars going on and everyone's competing with each other, I think that the window being that large is not a good thing. Um, I also think that the Warner Brothers window, well, selfishly, I think that's the best one because the same day we get the movie online as well.
Yeah.
Um, that's a pretty good deal, but I think that also leads to losses for them. So I understand why they want to move away from that. However, Universal's thing I think is the best one, which is like 17 days for smaller movies and around 31 days, which is a month for big movies. So a month I think is fine. People can go a month without knowing about who dies in Black Widow, but it's interesting that the Zack Snyder movie Army of the Dead was a test and it was pretty successful. It earned a lot in theaters, and it was also the number one movie worldwide on Netflix. So what do you guys think?
It is.
Is how does this help your experience of movie going?
But look, it's like, so if a film is doing well in theaters and it has legs, they're going to keep it in theaters no matter what kind of window they have on it. If it's 30 days, if it's 45 days. If you look at something like The Greatest Showman, which had maybe the best cinema legs since Titanic, that was in theaters for nearly 6 months because it was continuously making money and making money. So if a movie is doing that, they're going to keep it in theaters. But yeah, the lower budget ones, they're going to hit streaming or whatever streaming services they have a little bit quicker, which is pretty cool as well because, like, Casey, your cinemas aren't open yet, isn't that right? So you have to wait.
I still haven't
Here they're
seen Quiet
open.
Place 2.
Yeah, see, like, that's kind of annoying. So, but by the time, like, cinemas might not even be open in 45 days, but you can rent it or you can see it on some streaming service then. So that's pretty cool that way. So you don't have too long to wait, really. But back a few years ago, you'd have nearly months to wait for it to hit Blu-ray, and then eventually maybe a year or 2 year before it hits the streaming
I
service.
believe it
So the
was three
movies are come
months for usually.
3 months,
Yeah.
3 to 4 months.
Blu-ray. Yeah, that's crazy because whatever's going on in your life, might not get the chance to go see it in the big screens. You have to wait to buy it, physically or whatever. But yeah, I think the window is becoming shorter and shorter. And I think and Netflix are doing the opposite kind of now. They're putting the movies in theaters a week early, and then it hits Netflix, which proven what the Walking or what no, not what Walking Dead, but Army of the Dead did was it made money, it created a little bit of hype, and then a week later it hit Netflix and it was huge. So I think it depends on the movie and the
Yeah.
director. Christopher Nolan, Zack Snyder, those type of directors.
Scorsese.
Yeah, that Scorsese, it hits theaters first, then it hits Netflix. I think that's kind of keep them happy as well, and then it hits the streaming service. Yeah, I have no problem with this. It's pretty cool. And look, every every studio nearly has a streaming service now, so you won't have too long to wait to watch any of these.
Yeah, I personally, I don't have too much of a gripe with the theatrical to streaming window. It's just that, again, this is maybe me just being nostalgic of the pre-COVID lifestyle, but I do like the fact that, you get that experience of walking into a movie theater,
Yeah.
and then you have that exclusive, you get to watch the movie on a big screen, and then you wait, and then everyone else gets the experience. I love that. But I understand, times are changing. You can't. I very heavily doubt that it'll go back to that once everything is completely back to normal. So, you know, uh, uh, best case scenario for me, I would do like for now, I would do like a 14-day window. I think that's perfect because I think we're at the point where movies are starting to make, like the article says, even for Army, like movies are starting to make money at the box office. We're not in the early phases where we're making nothing. We're making something. So, like for example, Fast 9. I mean, it released in just China and it already made, I think, 200 million. So we're at that process where people are starting to go back to theaters, and but I do still understand that there's places in the world where, like you, Casey, you can't go. You can't go to the movies. So I feel like there needs to be a window. I think 14 days is probably appropriate, or same day of, or the Netflix model. And like you said, Sean, I think there needs to be some type of, there has to be variation from the type of movie and the type of director. So like Army, I think that was handled perfectly. Bring it to movies and then you put it to Netflix. But when you have smaller budget movies and movies that people don't really, they're not really dying to go to the movies and pay $20 for a ticket and watch it. Those movies, I feel like day and date, that might be the best model. And some of these movies, to be honest, are getting saved by this day and date model.
Yeah.
And I feel like, this is a tactic studios have to use. They can't use the same model for every single type of movie because you're not going to get the type of viewership that you are, I'm going to say it, for Black Widow than you are for, like, for example, Dune. Like, Dune is, in my opinion, an example of a movie that might get saved from a little bit of a lesser of a window to go straight directly to streaming, because I don't really, the general audience, I haven't really seen a single person that said I'm excited for that Dune movie. But
And it's also
know,
Denis, and he's
Yeah.
not a huge. His movies don't do well at the box office, although
Yeah.
they're great.
that,
But
yeah,
yeah,
I feel like I continue.
Right.
Sean?
I was just going to say, like you have to be very careful as well because like the cinemas are so important, theaters are so important. So the studios have to take into account that they need to stay in business as well.
Yeah,
So there's certain movies that have to hit theaters and be in cinemas for 2 to 3 months, whether it's a James Bond or a Fast and Furious or an MCU movie or a DC movie, because that's what saves cinema.
yeah,
And if they're not careful, like we talked about the pandemic maybe killing cinema, streaming services could kill it as well because Paramount have one now, Disney Plus, stuff like that. And people are in the habit of staying at home and stuff, so they have to be careful in a way, and they can't piss off the theaters too much because then the theaters are going to die as
Yeah.
well. So there has to be a balance. And I think it's a learning curve because we've gone through a pandemic where we're kind of not fully out of it, but people are going back to theaters. What's the best way to handle this? Like that movie in Infinite, I think it's called, the Paramount Plus movie with Mark Wahlberg. And if that came out just in theaters, I don't think it would do
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
I think it's a perfect streaming movie, that kind of way. And I think they knew that themselves. So that was really well handled. I think, but something like a Godzilla versus Kong,
Justice League.
if that was just if that was just exclusively for theaters, I know it's made like 400, 500 million. It would have made more because of how big that movie is. I think something like a Mortal Kombat, as you said, Sean, about some of the movies being saved by streaming services. I don't think Mortal Kombat would have made that much more than it already did. But I think with it being on a streaming service and making the money it did, that looks like a big win for everybody involved. So you have to. It's a hard game to predict, but you're going to have to think that's a streaming movie. Okay, that's a cinema and a streaming movie. That's just a cinema movie. The way around.
And I do believe that I don't remember when he said this, but there was an article with Ben Affleck, and he was talking about how in the future the movies that are going straight to the theater, they're not going to be the smaller projects like Nomadland or they're not. We're going to see less and less of that happen because I feel like the only thing that can save the movies is legitimately these big box office Fast and Furious Marvel movies, like you said, Sean. And it's just again, it's like kind of like a strategic move. They're at this spot where testing is happening. They're wondering they're going to stick to what works. So we're at this phase where it's kind of going to be unpredictable. One movie might come to directly just only like Quiet Place 2. I believe there's no option to get streaming for that. You're going to have to wait the 3 months. Or on the other hand, you have movies like, and you think of one, Black Widow, which is coming to Disney Plus, but you have to pay. But then you have movies that are coming day and date, like Godzilla vs. Kong came day and date. So it's just
a little bit messy right now.
Yeah, it's messy. It's kind of you just have to wait and see,
Shruti?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of them. So whatever they said, it's pretty much true. I mean, that's it out. I don't have anything to say about that.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I think as well. Like, look, I'm also a theatrical guy. I love watching movies. Like if it were up to me, I would watch a movie every single weekend. And I kind of was doing that right before the pandemic. And that's fun, but I love enjoying movies in the theater, but I also like if I have an option to watch some of them in the at home if I don't feel like going. So the option being present is I think key to this. The option being taken away, I get why they do that, because obviously they want to make box office money, and the numbers are clearer for that, in terms of success and everything. And it's the standard traditional way of doing stuff, so all the oldies in Hollywood are like accustomed to that. So change, nobody likes change, and change is still inevitable, so they eventually will have to conform to this new way of doing things.
And like A Quiet Place, there's some movies that you have to see in a theater. A Quiet Place, or even though it's just in theaters, you feel like as a fan, I have to see that in theaters. Like something about a Fast and Furious movie, you have to see that in the big screen. James Bond, the same thing. Tom and Jerry, I don't really have to see that in the big screen. Stuff like that. In Infinite, as I just said, I don't really have to see that. A lot of the Netflix movies aren't really worthy for a big screen outing. They're good enough just to sit at home and watch Netflix. So yeah, it depends on the movie. I think, as you said, as Ben Affleck said, in the future, not many people will be going to see these smaller movies. It'll be more of an event to go to theaters, probably.
Yeah,